Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ParaMindful, a fun bi-weekly episode where myself, Melball Collins, our good friend Carl fell down there, and Alex over there, we all come in and talk some spooky-ooky-ish from the paranormal, supernatural, UFO, anything kind of weird and just creepy-eepy. We talk about it. Carl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. I am off tomorrow as we
Ooh,
record this, so I'm like over freaking joyed.
it's like almost a Friday for you, hey?
Almost.
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 Friday on Hump Day. Can't argue with that. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I took half a day off today, and I'm
Hey,
probably gonna take tomorrow off, maybe
you're
Friday.
a winner.
So,
Anytime to get out of the shoot job, right?
what's that? Sorry.
Any way to get out of the shoot job, right?
That's right. That's right. How are you?
Excellent. Well, we are coming off of our first episode from what? Why are we shaking
How are you,
heads?
Mel?
I can't hear you over my loud face just exploding onto the
How are
scene.
you doing, Mel?
How are you, Mel?
I am doing good. It has been one hell of a weekend. I took it. You guys, Carl, did you take in Elimination Chamber on Saturday?
I did not because I took in Canadian Wrestling's Elite that was here live instead,
Right.
and then watched Elimination Chamber afterwards.
Fair. Didn't you see Ace Austin there? Or not Ace Austin, Austin Aries.
Yes. Fantastic
Oh,
guy. Before we get into the spooky-ooky-ish, I guess I actually was a professional wrestler. I've retired out, but I still help out. I ended
mhm.
up having to do a little bit of work with some of the audio. I ended up having to take ring gear from everyone. And quick little fun story: I went and grabbed Austin Aries' jacket that he wore out to the ring, and as he's
Mhm.
lowering it down to me, he goes, "Please be very careful with this. This is 100% authentic snuffleupagus fur, so be careful." I was just like,
Awesome.
"Okay,
Awesome.
okay."
That's wicked. I love that.
Right?
That's a
Does
great
that mean
story.
Snuffleupagus is dead?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
There's been three
That
different
just ruined
ones.
my childhood.
There's been three different ones. Conspiracy theory.
Bum, bum,
Oh
bum.
goodness.
Oh.
Sounds like
That's
an
the
episode of
next show.
ParaMindful here.
That's the next show.
Well, that can be a different show, but this show we are continuing on from our part 1 of the Ed and Lorraine series, where you can catch the first episode on our awesome YouTube channel ParaMindful, and you can also catch us on our local establishment. We did have an upload on there on Saturday. Very excited with our partnership with those guys. But we are going to jump into our part 2, where we are going to break down several of the cases that kind of made Ed and Lorraine, maybe the right word is infamous, among the paranormal and just in general, the New England kind of area. We're going to jump in with, I think, quite possibly the most physically recognizable case that they dealt with, that was kind of starting its humble origins in 1971, which is the ever creepy, freaky deaky doll thing that is Annabelle. Probably shouldn't be talking so much ish about her so she doesn't try to come into my house. And I hope that the protection wards that I have up are going to protect me from that. But essentially, what happened with Annabelle, the movie, guys, really does make the doll look like 10 times more creepy than it actually is in real life. The
Mhm.
real life Annabelle doll is simply a Raggedy Ann doll. Um, which kind of adds almost to the menacingness, I think, of the doll, because it does look so innocent. And thinking back in my generation, I had one of those dolls. It was sitting in my room, and I was creeped out by it then too.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, it's just a sign of things that were to come, or
I
already were, I guess, by
right.
that time. So
The Amityville.
Annabelle, the doll, originally the story is that it arrived in the home or the apartment of a nurse and her roommate, and it was a gift from the one of the roommate's mothers. The mother was, or sorry, the woman was a nurse. She lived there with one of her friends and her friend's fiance. The doll would often fall over randomly. They said that's kind of how it started, where there'd be no reasoning for it to fall over. Much how we like to see on Ghost Adventures, where they'll like stomp around stuff to try to see if it'll move, if there's wind, anything. There was no explanation for it to fall. And then they also started noticing that it would actually move around. So they would leave it in one place, they would come home and find it in another or in another room in a different position. And then they started to find notes that were left on parchment paper, which was odd to them for two reasons. The first being these two were not cooks. They did not cook, they did not know how to. They did not have parchment paper in the apartment. But also, they were now concerned that there should be no one else in the apartment as well. So there was no signs of forced entry. There was no signs of anyone coming in and out of the window or anything, or in and out of the door. There was no explanation for these notes just being randomly found around the place. And then the notes were pleading for help. There would just be like the word help on it or please help me. Um, so one day they actually found her with blood on her hands, or what they thought was blood. And they couldn't, again, find a source for this blood. It actually looked like it was coming from within the doll, like it was leaching out of the doll. However, there was no explanation, again, for the source or what it was. Um, so they did call a medium before bringing in Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they said that the doll had become the focus of a child's name being Annabelle, who was 7 years old. Her full name was actually Annabelle Higgins. She actually gave a first and last name for this child, who had died upon the grounds that the apartment was made upon before the apartment was actually constructed. Um, they didn't give a whole ton of background on Annabelle, but they did actually confirm that there had been a child death on that property before the grounds of that, or before the building had actually been constructed, and that it was not a natural death, so that it
Creepy.
was considered a violent death.
That's creepy.
Um, yeah. So this information obviously, like, tugs on the heartstrings. I'm not one for children, but like when if I know if there's like a child, trapped in my house, obviously that's a problem. And
Oh,
I'd want to be as accommodating to it as possible, especially if it is unseen, because Lord knows that little shit would make my day a living hell. Um, so as the time kind of went on, the fiance of the roommate actually became the target of Annabelle's attacks. He spent the most time in the building. I don't know if he was a deadbeat or what it was, but like he just seemed to. It was said that he spent the most time in the apartment and thus became the kind of focus of the attacks. He claimed that he would have bouts of sleep paralysis, that would where he would actually witness the doll dragging itself across the floor, climbing its way onto the bed, and then sitting on his chest and
nope,
attempting to strangle him
nope.
with its tiny little mitten hands.
I don't
And
care how
yeah,
much
I'm having the same reaction as Alex. Like,
I don't
I'm
care
in
how
the
much
mindset of like, kill it with fire,
I
all
don't
of
care
the
how much
fire.
love you have for your girlfriend or your boyfriend, but at that point in time, you're like, listen, you either come and live with me, or you visit me at my place,
Hmm.
or this is over, or see you later. Like, just walk right out,
Yeah,
leave.
deuces.
Like,
Like,
like
I am not willing to have to sit here and be like straddled by a doll violating my personal space in the middle of the night.
just the way you
Um,
word it with the crawling. I'm like, no, no. Like, I mean, it's a difference. I mean, it's different, but very similar. If it was walking, but like the
mhm,
fact that it's like crawling, no,
and it's
no,
like, come on, thing, if you have the physical power to
yeah, just
pull yourself, just
screw
get
it.
up.
Just screw it to the
That she
point.
went for full creep factor on
Yeah,
that one. She
100%.
wanted to scare the holy heckin' crap out of him, and it worked.
100%.
So right around the time that this was also happening, he would say that he would actually the Annabelle doll was typically in one of the other nurses, like the roommates' rooms. So he would actually hear her, the doll, Annabelle, wandering around in the room while the other two women were not in the house. Again, I would have the same reaction, like, you know, get out, throw a match, throws on some gas, let people know to get out.
Yeah, I was gonna
Like
say pull
that
the
would
fire
not
out
be
there
okay.
first.
So he actually thought he started thinking that there might have been an intruder in some of these moments. And one moment in particular, he actually went into the room and he saw Annabelle actually sitting on one of the chairs that she's usually not sitting in. She's usually on the nurse's bed. And he said, as he was looking at her, he felt a burning sensation on his chest, and three scratches actually appeared and manifested across his chest as he was staring at this creepy little doll that would constantly violate him every night. Whew. At this point, this was when Ed and Lorraine Warren became involved in the case. And they researched the doll, and Lorraine actually felt that it had a demonic entity attached to it, and that it was not actually a child, the ghost of this child who they had actually proven had been there. They actually said that it wasn't her at all. It was just pretending to be her to gain sympathy and be allowed to still stay within the apartment.
So was there still a child's like spirit in the place, or was it?
Not according to Ed and
So
Lorraine.
oh, okay, so it's just there was a dead kid on the property at one point, and this little
Mm.
douchebag decides like I'm gonna pretend. Okay,
He
fair
was
enough.
like, "That's a good mask.
This is a good one. Yeah, I'll take this one.
Yeah, that's a good
Mhm.
skin. We'll take that one." Yeah, I mean, the power of these things, clearly too much. Too much for our own good, that's for sure. So the Warrens actually performed a spiritual cleaning on the apartment as well as the people within. Um, but even though they had done this, the owners and the occupants, they still obviously didn't feel comfortable having said thing in their house and implored Ed and Lorraine to take it, which they agreed. And on the drive home, this is where things, start to get creepy for me. I mean, as if, the doll dragging itself across the room and trying to smother you in its sleep wasn't creepy enough. On the drive home, there was multiple brake line failures, multiple steering failures, and multiple near miss collisions as a result of both of these just randomly cutting out on them. They barely made it home. And it got to the point where every couple of miles, Ed would actually soak the doll in holy water just to try to get it home and get home safe.
Wow.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah, in the house, um, the doll Annabelle, I can't even imagine like knowing everything that the people had told him about this doll, why he did this. Ed stored Annabelle initially on his desk in his office. Like just like as like a trinket, like here's my wife and kid, here's Annabelle, the demonic possessed Raggedy Ann. Like, what, the nun is standing in the corner. Like, my goodness, you guys, you can't imagine the lack of peace that must have been in this house. Um, the Warrens, though, did start to feel and experience the exact same things that the people in the apartment were starting
No
to experience.
shit.
Yeah, they were
Like
seeing. Yeah, no kidding. No,
in the
duh.
shed at least.
It's one of those haderp moments, I
Yeah.
gotta tell you. But like things started moving, hauntings started happening, levitation started of the furniture, objects moving, the doll moving. Um, Ed invited a priest over to perform a blessing at this point of the house so that they could figure out how to kind of deal with everything. Initially, the priest dismissed Annabelle being the cause of the problem.
Until the priest's
And
head exploded.
so the priest nearly died in a
Oh,
car accident.
my bad.
Immediately after leaving the Warrens' home and performing this blessing, again, shockingly, his brakes failed. and he
Interesting.
managed to somehow make it safely through a busy intersection without dying. So like, I don't
Hmm.
know, and that was a moment where, the devil was going and God was going like, goodness gracious, I guess he became a believer after
I
that.
didn't know that part of the
um
story. That's pretty interesting. That's also
yeah.
quite
So the
interesting that the
incident with the priest resulted in Annabelle being put in the casing that
okay.
she has been in ever since. And I didn't see it on the um the website, so I don't know if it was elaborated for the movie or not. But in the movie, they had said that her casing was made out of glass from like a decommissioned church, and that the wood was actually made from an altar from another church, and that everything that was placed in and around her was blessed as the blessed could be, to ensure that the thingy-majiggy in the thing did not get out of the thing.
That was in the movie or that's in real life?
That was in the movie. So
Okay.
again, I don't know if that's
Um,
actually legit, but for
I'm
me, I like to think it
right.
is.
I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with the glass. That's
Mm,
definitely possible. But seeing as they're talking about priests, I'm assuming it's Catholic priests.
I think so, yeah.
They would not let an altar be taken apart.
Okay, so that
Yeah,
was probably elaborated for the
it's
movie
yeah,
then.
but it's definitely possible it could have been a pew or
Hmm.
something else, but it never
Yeah,
never would have been an altar. No.
anything holy.
Yeah, or anything
Everything
for the church.
holy. Holy
It-
hand grenade. Throw that shit in there. Like.
anything from a
And like
church can yeah.
again, we mentioned before this, like Annabelle now is in the Warren family house. She does sit in the museum of collectible haunty auntie weirdish creepy stuff. Carl, you'd mentioned in a video beforehand, there's actually now a distillery sort of kind of thing going where there was like some alcohol that had been distilled
Y-
in and around Annabelle.
Yeah, I believe it was a vodka that was
Yeah.
being made, and I would definitely try it. I would definitely drink that.
Beware of head spinning
Now,
after.
does does Annabelle still reside in that museum, or
Correct.
did okay, I wasn't sure
Yeah.
if Zach took possession of
He
Annabelle.
did not. No, no.
Okay.
And let's be honest. I love Zach Bagans, but goodness have mercy, don't give him control of that thing.
Right?
We
Right?
already saw. Yeah, we've already seen what happens when he gets into the room with it. It's not to take anything away from him. Annabelle is a very, very strong entity, whatever it is. And she was able to get to him when everyone was sitting there saying, "Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't
And
touch it."
and
What
what
did
did he
he
do?
freaking do?
I'm just double checking right now.
He freaking touched it. You
While
don't touch
Alex
it,
double
girl.
checks with that, maybe sometime down the road we'll even talk about dolls, but I've had the
Mm.
the pleasure of being right beside face to face with Robert the
Ooh,
doll.
No way.
that's
Yeah, in Key
cool
West.
and creepy at the same time.
And I absolutely loved it. And yes, there is signage everywhere that says no photography, no video, like nothing for your
That
own
is super
safety.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
touchy.
That's
I
really
loved
cool.
it.
See,
No touchy.
I I put more for me. I don't know. It weighs more Robert the doll than Annabelle does for me.
Mm, mm.
I don't know why they're both possessed dolls, but
Yeah, I feel to a degree, and this is just a personal thing. Certain horror movies nowadays, it, it devalues the actual fear of the thing. Like for me,
Right.
when I've watched the entire the only movie I haven't seen from this Ed and Lorraine series, as it were, is the Devil Made Me Do It movie. I've
yeah,
seen all of the other ones. I've seen the Annabelle one. I've seen the original Annabelle. When I saw the demon thing that was attached to Annabelle, I lost all investment.
yeah.
It just looked like a black devil, which is like
It's very
everything looks like a
easy.
black devil now.
It's
Right.
very easy to do. It's very
Yeah. So
it's
like,
almost well, it's a cliche, is what it is, right?
yeah.
It's
So
more.
it's
It's
like
to
we
me.
haven't seen a really good Robert the Doll kind of creepy kind of thing. Maybe, I mean, maybe that you don't want to because that might incite some wrath from Robert, but like,
See, to me,
Mhm.
it's scarier when they don't show that stuff.
yeah, yeah, there's
It's
a certain degree of surprise and kind of like
I'll always
fear that is behind that unknown kind
I'll
of.
always throw it back to M. Night Shyamalan's movie Signs. Signs is a
Yeah, yeah.
phenomenal movie.
Oh,
And then right at the end, they show.
Mm,
I won't break it to anybody, but they show the monster-ish thing, and you're
yep.
like,
yeah,
"Ah."
way less scary.
Yeah, you're like, well, now I
Way
know
less
what it is.
scary.
Why do I give a, So
It's way less scary after that.
see,
So, guys, Carl, what do you think about this Annabelle doll?
Um, I had a Raggedy Andy when I was a kid, and I'm glad that all of this has happened to Raggedy Ann and not Raggedy Andy. So I think I'm pretty safe. Um, the guy that was being tormented and being raped by Annabelle. Um,
shouldn't laugh, but
I,
yeah.
I
Oh,
I
clearly some
think
mystery.
maybe he should have just embraced it, maybe, and just like cuddled,
Just all she wanted was just to be what was she? She'd be a succubus, right?
Everyone wants to be
right?
loved, right?
Just yeah, that's exactly it. Just wanted to be loved. Just
Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love?
he didn't give that to her. So I mean, I'm sorry, Mel, but I know the wrath of women when like they don't get what they want. It,
We get pretty
it
mad.
can be extramental. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's all she wanted. Maybe all she wanted was some cuddles.
Yeah.
But no,
Yeah.
it. In all seriousness, I would love to be in the same room with Annabelle.
Mm,
Um, touching it, definitely not. I would not go that far.
no.
Zach, you're absolutely batshit crazy for doing so.
One
He
day, Zach,
almost
Um,
died.
foolishness.
Didn't he
One
almost
day.
get struck by lightning like 3 days later?
yeah,
And like,
yeah,
come on, 3 days later,
Yeah.
right.
my guy.
But
Please don't die on us. We need
it's
ghost
just something
adventures.
that definitely interests me, right? So I would
Mm-hmm.
100% want to experience that,
Mm-hmm.
just to say that I was in the same room. I was right beside this possessed doll,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm living to tell the tale type of situation, right? Like, and that's how, the same way I feel with Robert the Doll. Absolutely loved it. It was such a cool experience and such a different feeling when
Mm-hmm.
you're around something like that, that I want to experience that. And I want the vodka.
At the same time, have a shot with Annabelle. I mean, how
Right?
often are you going to be able to say you did that? I had a shot with a
Genius.
legit demon.
Genius. I would love to do so.
I
Somebody make it happen for me.
was gonna say, I feel like that's something that the Warrens, like the remaining Warrens, could market really good. Did you glitch out again over there, Alex?
I did, and you're gonna really be creeped out when I tell you the time that I'm glitched out at.
What time?
Take a guess.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I swear. I swear.
Come on. Your Melball's been being stalked. Was it 222?
It was 22:22.
Frick grade off. Ah,
Legit,
these
guys.
numbers are haunting me, you guys.
I don't
Haunting
have
me.
any magic buttons or anything. I'm hardwired into my internet, so there's no reason for it. I just I
Yeah.
was like, this is
Just
weird.
deliver the freaking message. Your girl's not good at math. Come on.
Super weird.
Alex, what do you think about Annabelle before we move on?
Well, now I'm not gonna say anything bad because clearly she's in my computer. No.
We've got
No,
evil eyes up. I think we're good.
I find it very compelling that the parchment paper thing.
Mhm.
That to me is very interesting. I think if I was that guy, not even not even because of the doll itself, but like just because there's parchment paper, I would be a little bit I don't want to be here kind of thing.
Mhm.
If you're having more than one experience with a doll doing that, why are you staying? Which also makes me think maybe it's exaggerated. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like I'm just trying to think devil's
That makes
advocate.
sense.
Um, I
So
I
we have
would
seen like a lot of stuff where people choose not to leave because either they financially can't or maybe they physically can't, right? It could have been,
right,
mind you, with
but
3 people living in the apartment, there shouldn't really be much of an excuse.
right. And where
Right.
did he come from first? He had to have a place first. Like
That's true.
I'm assuming, right? But
Hmm.
I find it. I would put more stock in the fact that it is in fact a demon than it would be a ghost of a child, because I feel like a
Hmm.
ghost of a child would be not malicious, like it would just a little bit more chaotic, a little bit causing like harmless
More
fun.
fun,
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
but
an
like
enjoyable haunting.
I'm I'd like to I'd like to be able to talk to that dude and be like, listen, tell me all the details of your sleep paralysis, because I find
Mm.
that would be
Right.
interesting. Because what if it's sleep paralysis, but like he's in that perfect zone where it's actually like normal sleep, well, normal, but what if it's the old hag syndrome? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know what that is, Mel, or no, but
No.
it's when sleep paralysis happens, and this happens to a lot of people. But there's like an old hag, like an old witch-looking woman that crawls up and sits on your chest and stares you in the face.
Oh yeah, I've heard that a lot on the Dead Files. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just it's kind of interesting. I don't know, but it's hard for me to accept these very outlandish type stories
Mm.
when it's just like this dude said it, right?
That's
Like
Right.
fair. That's fair.
if
People can lie.
his roommates or his girlfriend and her roommate or whatever walked in and like Raggedy Ann was crawling on the ground, maybe a different story. Side note, I also had a Raggedy Andy,
Hmm.
and it wasn't possessed that I know of.
I mean, if I walk into a room and I see a Raggedy Ann or Raggedy anything kind of
Just turn
crawling its
around.
way across the floor, I am looking for my kendo stick and I am beating the holy hell and crap out of it. Let me tell you.
I'm just walking out, open the door.
That's a whole lot of nope. Nope. We're moving on from that.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any final thoughts on Annabelle here? Kind of like it's a very interesting kind of situation. You know, the medium saying that it was possessed by a child, the
Mhm.
clairvoyant saying it's possessed by a demon. The actions certainly would suggest more demonic than childish, as Alice brought up there. Um, I don't know. I don't think. I think, and I don't want to see her. I think she's good where she is. I don't, because I would be compelled to touch her, and Melball's a weak mind. I would just want to boop her, and that would
Hmm.
open up all kinds of chaos that this girl just doesn't need in her life right
Do you
now.
think that'd be a really interesting place to go to see, though? You know what I mean? Like all the little
Yeah,
knickknacks and things that we don't even know exist that are there, you know?
Yep. Oh
That'd be
yeah. I
yes.
do believe that the museum is actually closed now, though.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it operated for 7 decades and then it permanently closed in 2019.
But now you're glitching, which is super weird. Now that you're searching about it, that's weird.
Annabelle, we don't want to come see you. Don't
We should
worry.
have had our computers blessed before we started this thing.
Although maybe she's
Hmm.
trying to call us to where, she's been, Wouldn't mind going down
Maybe.
to Vegas, seeing the haunted museum there. And
I hear
like
it's pretty cool.
there isn't that where Robert is, or which doll is in there? There is a
I
Oh,
think
I'm
doll
not
in there.
sure.
I think Robert's still in Key West, to be honest with you.
Key West, yeah. Robert's in Key West,
Yeah.
Florida.
There is it the
There is a
doll
doll.
or is it the Dybbuk
There's a doll.
box that I'm getting confused with?
He's got both. Because there's a doll where he has a room of dolls, and there's like, yeah, look it up.
Somebody's
Good,
got some
good
weird
work. Have
kinks.
fun sleeping.
So moving on from the creepy Annabelle, we're gonna go into the next interesting kind of series, or the next case that kind of really did kind of pull Ed and Lorraine into infamy. This one is interesting, and I know you got some interesting views on this one. Alex, do you want to introduce the people to the interesting case of the Amityville Horror?
All right. So, there's lots to this story, so I'm cutting out a little bit just for time's sake. There's lots of little nuances and things. So, in the autumn of 1974, there was a murder, a mass murder, if you will. Um, so the house was it was 112 Ocean Drive, I believe, in Long Island, New York. It's actually Amityville. It's a little community of whatever. So people who owned the house was Ronald DeFeo Sr., Louise DeFeo, and they had children. They had 5 children. Dawn, who was 18, Allison, who was 13, Mark, who was 12, and John, who was 9. And they also had Ronald DeFeo Jr., who was, I believe he was 23, I think. I didn't write it down. I think it was 23. Yes, so he shot them all in their sleep. So that's the
Thrown
thing.
right out there.
I'm cutting out some stuff. So there's lots of nuances and things about it, but he took a 35 caliber Marlin 336C rifle. So if you were to check up the cartridge, what a 35 caliber is, it's a very large round, and it is the only one that is actually still made by Remington, and it's basically designed as a like a bush pilot gun. So it's designed to, if you had to, you fired at a bear, that bear is going to be really pissed off and run away, right? So Ronald DeFeo Jr. went by the nickname Butch. At 3 o'clock in the morning on...
A few moments later.
I had the date in my head. Anyways,
Hmm.
doesn't
Oh.
matter. In the autumn...
I was gonna say, don't say it was the 22nd of something because I will lose my shit.
that would be super creepy.
That would be.
He shot every one of his family members. He started with his dad, shot his dad twice, shot his mother twice, shot his siblings all one time. And the interesting thing to note about this is none of them had any chemicals in their system, i.e. like tranquilizers or sleeping pills or anything. There were signs that both Dawn and Allison, so his 18-year-old and his 13-year-old sisters, were awake at the time, but like didn't know that he had done it, which I find very interesting because it's a very large cartridge, and the police are 100% sure that he did not use a suppressor or a silencer for those colloquial people, which is bizarre. So you shoot your dad twice. And I mean, it's a fast enough reloading weapon because it's a lever action. So I could see the parents, you know, because they're both beside each other. I could see that. But the kids, I don't understand. Also, what are you doing killing your What are you doing killing your family? But anyways, so this happened at 3 a.m. Keep that in mind because that's going to play into my next part. So yes, what do we got? They were all lying down. When he was caught, he basically ran to a pub or whatever it was, and he was, oh, my parents were shot, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, when they caught him, he said, once I started, I just couldn't stop, which I find kind of creepy. Yes, so there was no evidence of sedatives or drugs at all, even though he said that he drugged his parents to make them fall asleep. There's no evidence of it at all. They've all been tested, or they were all tested, I should say. But anyways, let us jump forward 13 months. So a year and 1 month after DeFeo killed his family. The house had been empty until that point, and this family, so I should say it's 1975 now, just so you're aware.
1975.
A guy named George and his wife, last name is Lutz, L-U-T-Z. They decide to buy this home. It's an amazing deal. It is $80,000, and it is on a it's not beachfront. It's like a canal almost that leads to the ocean. Very beautiful home. If you were to Google Maps it, it's actually blanked out. Every single version of every single angle of shot you can get from that house is blanked out, so you'll have to look at old school stuff. They've also remodeled the house so it doesn't look like the original Amityville house anymore. Just so you creepy people out there who want to go hunt it down. They've also changed the address. So it was 112. It's now 108 Ocean Drive. So keep that in mind. Don't actually, that has nothing to do with the story, but if you're going to argue. So it was a Dutch colonial house. So it had big peaks, roof and everything. But it had obviously a super bad backstory. The Lutzes knew about this backstory, and they decided to buy the house anyways because it was such a good deal. I was able to find out how much the house cost them. It was $80,000 on the button in 1975. So I did the
Okay.
math, and as of today, like exactly today, in American dollars, that is $444,862.45. If you're a Canuck and you use Canuckistan Kopecks, which is what we use here, I'm just kidding, it's dollars, $603,035.52. So for the house is massive. It's beautiful. It has a boathouse, all sorts of things. So that's an incredibly good price for that area, for that house, everything, right? So why
Yeah.
not go for that deal, right? Which is why they said, hey, you know what? There was a murder here. Let's deal with it, you know?
Mhm.
So total bargain. Anyways, so they did know, like I said, that there was some murders. So the first day that they were in there, they called in a priest to bless it, Roman Catholic priest. So it's a very Catholic thing to do when you're, I guess, like I don't want to say hardcore. That seems kind of rude, but you know, when you're like really into Catholicism, if you move into a new house, you're supposed to go around to every corner of the house and bless it with holy water with a cross and stuff. Going back into like antiquity, it's because they think that evil spirits hide in corners and stuff. Anyways, that's not part of the story. Don't worry about it. So as the priest is blessing the house, he apparently gets slapped by what he said was a cold hand, and then he heard a voice that said, "Get out." The priest was actually interviewed in, I think it was the year 2000, for a follow-up kind of like documentary, and he's like, yes, in fact, that did happen, and he's just a priest. He's not trying to be famous in the movies or anything, so I'll accept that one.
Right.
But there were doors that would slam in the middle of the night. They smelled foul odors, which, I mean, you're living by a canal. There's possible skunks and stuff, so I'll take that one out. Always cold in the house. Again, you're living by a canal, and it's Long Island, so winter, autumn, whatever, it's cold. But the door slamming is very interesting to me because they were saying it was the front door, and that front doors are not weak doors. They're not like these kind of doors. They're not like hollow or whatever. They're right. So that I thought was kind of interesting. The weird thing is, and this brings it back to 3 o'clock in the morning, what I told you guys to remember. So George always ended up being woken up at 3:15 in the morning ish. So around the time where the murders took place, or during the time that the murders would have taken place. This is the part that really gives me goosebumps, though. Their daughter Missy. So they had a daughter. They actually had 2 kids. Anyways, she began talking with a invisible friend named Jody. Now, I'm not a fan of the whole, my kid has an invisible friend. I get really creeped out about that, but like in this situation, I'd be even more creeped out. Not that
Right.
not that this Jody did anything, or that I found this Jody did anything. It's just bizarre circumstances put together. But she would talk about Jody being a little child, and like, oh, Jody did that, you know, like blaming things on Jody, like slamming doors and things like that. Kathy, so George's wife, she claims that she was levitated at one point above her bed, and then was also left with large welts on her chest that would just appear. So that's a thing. So we cut to January 14, 1976. That is a whopping 28 days later. Was it 28 days? Whatever it was. I think it was 28, if I did the math correctly. The Lutzes, they call it quits. They leave the house. The interesting thing is that the Lutzes have passed several polygraph tests. I have done polygraph tests. I've been polygraphed, so I know that there are ways to... There, contrary to popular belief, there's only a pass and an inconclusive on polygraph tests. There are no fails. So a fail would be an inconclusive. We couldn't tell if he was lying or not, kind of thing. These people, by all accounts, passed the polygraph, and that's a fairly hard thing to do unless you know how polygraphs work and you are trained as like SAS and that kind of shit to like deal with that kind of stuff. And then they don't pass them. They like the SAS don't pass polygraphs. They just inconclusive them. It's very
Right.
so. Anyways, so just something to keep in mind. That's something I found interesting because having done this makes you sound like a criminal, but anyways, I've been through
It was
two
a part of your police recruitment stuff, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's
Make
a,
him sound like a hardened criminal over there.
it's
You don't have that well manicured beard when you're in a criminal
I'm in the mafia, is
organization.
what I am. The French mafia.
What?
It's Corsica? Yeah, Corsica. So it's like half French, half Italian. Anyways,
No.
don't worry about it. So they left the house, and something interesting to point out is that 2 months later, so the house went empty for 2 months, and there was a reporter named Laura Didio, so Didio, Didio, whatever. She got, Didio killed the raid. No. She assembled a group of psychics, and they call this one, it's quoted as being the psychic slumber party or the psychic sleepover. So
Sounds fun.
it sounds bizarre until you realize that this is the time where they got that creepy picture of the little boy. So what we didn't go into in our first video was that there was nobody in that home. 0 people in that home except for Ed and Lorraine. And I tried to find the other psychics' names, and I couldn't find anything on them. However, we know that they were all adults and they were all psychics.
Interesting.
Besides the reporter. So
Right.
we know that there were no kids there. And one of the people took the picture that had that little boy's head in it, which is super, super. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. So they walked from room to room, and Lorraine, and I quote, she said, "I feel overwhelmed. I feel a horrible depression throughout this whole building." She said, so that's at that time is when they got the picture of the little boy, is when she said that, right at the top of the stairs. She says it's as close to hell as she ever wanted to get. So I'm not done yet. The interesting thing for me is that the years afterwards, there was the owner that owned it after the Lutzes, bought it off the Lutzes. They were there from 1977 to 1987, and they experienced nothing. 0. No slamming doors, no weird smells, no weird noises, nothing. So I don't... It's bizarre for me to think about that, because is it something that had to do with the Lutzes, or is it something that had to do with the house? Was it something about the Lutzes and the house combined? You know, like, was it energies? I'm not quite sure. So yeah. So in the year 2000, there was a documentary, like I just mentioned before, that Ed, he's quoted as saying, "This was no ordinary haunted house. On a scale of 1 to 10, this was a 10. And I don't have any credible proof that any of this shit happened, except for that picture of that little boy. And while it's 100% proven, 100% that
Right.
The DeFeo murders happened. In
Yeah.
fact, DeFeo Jr., so Butch DeFeo, actually died March 12th, 2021 at the age of 69 in prison in, I have it right here, Fallsburg, New York, in the Sullivan Correctional Facility. So he was arrested. He was given 6 counts of second-degree murder, so effectively 6 life terms, which is 25 years, and then you have the chance of parole. He didn't have the chance of parole because they wouldn't give it to him. So they're like, he tried and tried and tried, and they said no.
I wonder why.
Right.
Could you have shot your family? I'm not sure. It goes a little bit further with the fact that Butch DeFeo's lawyer came forward. So his name is William Weber. He came forward and admitted that he and the Lutzes had gotten together and they created this. He said, and I quote, "Created this horror story over many bottles of wine in hopes of getting a new trial." So it's worth mentioning that Butch DeFeo also said, "Hey, effectively, the devil made me do it. I heard voices; they told me to do it." So he was trying to get another trial for his client, effectively, right? And it didn't work, obviously. But I don't know how to take it. I don't know the Lutz person, the Lutzi, whatever. The Lutzes. I don't know them personally, so I can't really comment on them as people.
Right.
I have a hard time. Their story is extremely outlandish. Like, it's very bizarre. If you if you watch the movies are not the same as the story. So there's weird things that happen in the movie. Obviously, it's
No, because Ryan Reynolds was George, and
Right.
Ryan Reynolds is hot.
exactly
George
right.
is not.
But I'm talking about the original, the original one. We all know that Ryan Reynolds can do no wrong, except for the Green Lantern. But
Neither can his love handles. No,
hey, do not.
they were
be
out in that movie a lot. He was topless a lot. That was why that movie did as well as it did. Let's be
Ryan
honest.
Reynolds. He's a beautiful man. Anyways,
He is a gorgeous man.
I'm talking about the original one.
Oh yes, no, not that one. Yeah, no.
So I don't doubt that there's negative energy in that house. I also don't doubt that house is haunted. I don't think it's haunted by something that is like evil, like violent and that kind of thing, right? I don't think it's going to make somebody levitate off a bed. If we believe that picture, then clearly there is entities there, which would make sense because they died violently. So they're living in this kind of area where it's just like, are they still around because they had a violent death? They weren't prepared for it. They didn't know it was coming. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know how much credibility I put in the Lutzes, seeing as they are the only ones to have ever encountered any of that stuff. And when you get a lawyer, lawyers are I shouldn't say by trade liars. They're not. They are very good with wordage.
Right.
And I think that this might be one of those cases. So my running theory is that the house is in fact haunted, but I think that the Lutzes might be exaggerating for a payday. I don't know the monetary situation that the Lutzes were in at the time, but it would be kind of convenient if you said, hey, you know what? This house is really creepy. Let's get out of here to kind of back out of something, get somebody interested in buying it again because it's haunted and special. I don't know. Maybe that was the case, but a huge salt lick from a horse's stall is what I'm going to take this story with. Although, like I said, I do believe that it is haunted with maybe the spirits of the DeFeo family, because that is a brutal way to go. So
Yeah.
The photo is definitely a little hard to dispute, and it definitely looked very Children of the Cornish.
100%. I don't doubt that Lorraine picked something up. I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that Ed picked something up at all. But I mean, it's also possible that they were picking up like, holy shit, there's a lot of a sadness in here. It's very depressive.
Residual death. Yeah.
That's 6 people dead, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. Yeah, 6 people dead, and violently in the span of like 8 minutes or whatever it would be, right? So
yeah, it would make sense that kind of level of death would actually cause some kind of issue kind of on this plane for sure. I mean, it certainly has in the past with war and stuff like that. It certainly would consider that now.
Sorry that took so long. It's just there's a lot of stuff that had to like.
That's fair. That's fair.
Cursor to the Lutzes, right? So
let's get into the Perron family. This is probably the most well known, I would say,
right,
and the most interesting case that Ed and Lorraine got to deal with. So, Karl, please introduce us to the Perron family.
The Perron family, January 1971, moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, where Carolyn, Roger, and their 5 daughters began to notice some strange things happening almost immediately after they moved in. It started small. Carolyn would notice that the broom would go missing, or it would kind of be moved place to place, kind of on its own. She would hear the sound of something scraping against like the kettle in the kitchen when no one was in there. And she'd find small piles of dirt in the center of a freshly cleaned kitchen floor. The girls began to notice spirits around the house, though for the most part they were harmless. There were a few, however, that seemed to be angry. Carolyn, the mother, allegedly researched the history of the home and discovered that it had been in the same family for 8 generations, and that many of them had died under mysterious or horrible circumstances. Several of the children had drowned in a nearby creek. One was murdered, and a few even hanged themselves in the attic.
A few.
Mhm.
Shit. Wait, this is over 8 centuries, though, right?
Correct. Over, 8 generations.
One family. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, no, not the one family. Over 8 generations.
For my brain. Okay.
Yeah. So it was the same family, but 8 generations of the family.
Mhm.
Right. Gotcha.
Yes. So the spirit that was depicted in the film, The Conjuring, was Bethesda. And that appeared to have been the worst of them all. The spirit was kind of perceiving herself as like the mistress of the house, and she kind of resented the competition of any mother figure that came in and posed inside that position. It turns out that there was actually a real person named Bethesda Sherman who lived on the parents' property in the mid 1800s. She was rumored to have been a Satanist.
Oh, this is a twist I did not expect. Oh, excuse me. I'm just going to have to owe this out until I'm not surprised anymore.
And there was evidence that she had been involved in the death of a neighbor's child, although no trial ever took place. When she died, she was actually buried in the nearby Baptist cemetery in downtown Harrisville. The parents believed that it was Bethesda's spirit that was tormenting them. According to the eldest daughter, Andrea, the family experienced other spirits as well that smelled like rotting flesh, would cause beds to rise off of the floor. And she claims that her dad would enter the basement and feel a cold, stinking presence behind him. So they often tried to stay away from the dirt floor cellar.
Right.
But the heating equipment would fail quite often and quite mysteriously, causing Roger to have to actually go down there. Over the 10 years that the family lived in the house, the Warrens made multiple trips there to investigate. At one point, Lorraine conducted a seance to attempt to contact the spirits that were possessing the family. During the seance, Carolyn Perron became possessed, speaking in tongues and rising from the ground in her chair. After the seance, Roger actually kicked the Warrens out, worried about his wife and mental stability in all of this. And according to Andrea, the oldest daughter, the family continued to live in the house due to financial instability until they were able to move in 1980. So from 1971 to 1980.
Jeez.
Once they moved, that's when the spirits were silenced and the hauntings ceased. Now, for those of you that have actually seen the movie, The Conjuring, it's definitely Hollywooded up. So there you will see kind of in there where there's an exorcism that is done, I believe. Well, that exorcism did not happen. It was actually just the seance that had happened. So the film was obviously doctored a little bit to kind of make it a little bit more scary, but That
Mhm.
did not happen. Everything was just Lorraine with the seance that caused all of this to happen.
I'd actually heard also that was it Bethesda? How you said it?
Bethesda.
Bethesda,
Bethesda.
Maryland.
I actually heard that she actually had relation to somebody who was actually on trial and actually executed in Salem. So she was actually
Interesting.
Okay.
related to them. She was accused of witchcraft and I believe burned at the stake.
And I do want to correct myself. It's Bathsheba.
Bathsheba.
Yes, not
Bathsheba, yes.
yes, Bathsheba.
Yes, and the woman that she was related to, her name was Marytown Eastley.
Okay.
She
She was
sounds
one
like
of
a
the
lovely.
50, or sorry, one of the women executed in Salem as a witch 50 years prior to
Okay.
Bathsheba being alive, essentially. So I think they
As,
were like
Okay.
cousins loosely.
as an interesting side note, there's now a memorial to those women who were burned at the stake.
Mhm.
I always thought it was tons. It was only like 27 or something like that. There's not a lot of women who were, which I mean is great, but like when you hear about it as a kid, you're like, oh, the Salem witch trials. You're like, hundreds and
Mm.
thousands of women were crucified or whatever, right? So
I mean, realistically speaking, it did kind of really mess up their like town.
no, for sure, for
Right.
sure.
Because like even men were executed too, but like women they weren't quite. We didn't quite outnumber you guys then.
No,
You.
and like I said, I just you always think about the Salem witch trials. You'd be like, oh my God, there's got to be hundreds. There's not, or there
I mean,
wasn't.
it's much like that.
No.
What's that town that disappeared? The settlement that disappeared.
Roanoke.
Yeah, the same
Yeah,
thing. I mean, it makes it sound like, oh my God, it was a massive settlement, but it was like what 150 people.
it was 150 people, and they were living on an island during one of what is considered to be still one of the biggest droughts of all time. They didn't know how to
Yeah.
hunt. There were
Maybe that's something we can discuss
two
on
warring tribes of
ParaMindful.
Native Americans as well. So that's a
Right.
whole.
I mean, this is what ParaMindful does, right? We end up coming up with random more topic matter
Mhm.
as
Rabbit
we
holes.
discuss more. Yeah, it's like Pinterest of the ParaMindful. You go in for one thing and you come out in another.
So before we go on, I'm just going to put everybody's contact in all right here, so we can save some time. Because our deadline, we're
Sounds
close.
good.
So here,
Not a problem. We should probably wrap her up here. So we should real quick talk about our sponsor, Rogue Energy Drinks, or Rogue Energy. I just like energy drinks. And we have amazing kind of partnership going on with those. If you go to rogueenergy.com, use the promo code OLEPODS, you can get 10% off of your order. There's a ton of different flavors for you to try. They have energy drinks, they have protein, they have hydration if you're just feeling thirsty and don't want to drink water. Totally relatable. I also hate water, even though it's good for me. But yeah, definitely check out Rogue Energy there. Again, use the OLE pods, get 10% off. Everyone likes to save money.
for those who don't know, we put this on Twitch, and Twitch has a cutoff of 1
1
hour.
hour.
So
Mm-hmm.
we're at 1 hour and 1 minute, and I'll do some
You'll cut
clipping.
our weird shit.
That's right.
And if you do have
Oh.
anything for us, check out the ticker down below, paramindful@gmail.com. Send us any questions, concerns, comments, or any issues you're having and that you may want a little bit of help with.
Alex, do you have anything else to say to the beautiful people?
I love you all.
Oh,
Be
how
safe.
nice. How sweet. Karl, can you follow that up?
Bye.
So that being said, we are coming to the end of ParaMindful here. I am your Melball. Over there is Alex, your werewolf. Down there is Karl Calafell. We will see you next time, guys.